All right, and welcome to the Financial Advocacy Podcast. I am your host, David Kinder, registered financial consultant, charter life underwriter, here with my co-host, Mike Moffitt. Kurt Gibbs is conspicuously absent again. Um, we got to figure out what's going on with that guy. What
Yeah,
I'm
we got
hoping is that
we got to
he's
get it.
closing a massive case, and it was an appointment that he couldn't reschedule. But I don't think that's the case. I think it might be a small thing, but whatever. Clients do come first. It is annoying when it does interfere with pre-existing appointments that are standing on the schedule for the past 3 months. Okay, Kurt, we're just giving you a hard time. It's okay.
Nah, it's all good, Kurt. Business always comes first, man.
Yeah, reasonably so. All right, so um, we're kind of continuing on a theme from 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we did our thing about the fiduciary duty and how it isn't quite all that it seems to be. At the same time, I can understand why regulators and consumer advocacy groups and such want better disclosure, better standards, better explanations of some of our products, because quite frankly, they can be sometimes unintentionally but misleading. And let me share real quick. I'm going to share my screen because I saw this, and of course, where do I get all my content from or to talk about? Get it from
TikTok.
TikTok, you know. And so this image here, which of course is small. Let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit here. This guy. Now I blocked out his name because, quite frankly, I didn't listen too much on this guy, and I didn't care to because, quite frankly, they irritate me. Almost all of them, irritate me.
They are irritating, I have to say. They are. They are. These guys especially are pretty annoying.
Okay, so you listened in. I maybe listened at most 1 minute,
Yeah, I've
and
actually listened to them several times, and I've interacted with them some, and I've actually educated them on a few things. But of course, nobody's ever willing to admit they're wrong, right? So it was more or less of okay, yeah, whatever. But yeah, no, I've interacted with them a little bit, and I've sent them some information, and when silence is acceptance, as they say. So
yeah, true. What does it take for evil to flourish? Is for good men to do nothing. At the same time, I wonder, is this my fight? Well, I'll fight my own way by combating some of this crap on my own platform, not on theirs. I don't need the interaction. I don't need the stress. I don't need to figure out why are you such an idiot kind of a thing. It bothers me. So, but let's look at just the screenshot here. This guy is talking about annuities, and in my opinion, he's talking about the sizzle. And there's a lot of sizzle about annuities that when we add up into the real formula of what it's going to provide, the sizzle doesn't necessarily match up. And I don't mind the sizzle, but it's like you got to give the whole picture. So let's look at what this guy is showing here. And I'm just going to go straight to, not his mug. Why does it look like I'm zeroing in on the wrong part here? But I'm looking at the left side here, okay? Here, let me do it this way.
it's not getting much better, Kinder.
Not much better, but I need to see the numbers. I'm nearsighted. I'm not near. I don't know. My vision is somewhat impaired. So let's go
You're
straight to the
you're
numbers.
nearly farsighted.
Whatever it is. Okay. So this guy is saying at age 55, if you put $1 million in with him, there's this bonus of 100,000, which is it's a 10% bonus. And then there's this income for life, which if we look at this, I don't know when this triggers. When does his income for life start? Now he's talking about at age 55. I have to assume because most annuities are a deferred annuity, which means that there's certain rules that are enforced by the IRS that if you take distributions before age 59 and a half, you're going to pay a 10% penalty on the growth. So there's certain rules in there. So I have to assume we got to have at least a 10-year waiting period before we start to trigger this income. And that's what's missing from the numbers here. I wish he would have said at age 65 or age 70, this annuity will do this. And that can help to, really round out the true picture. But seeing the bonus, in age 50, we got the same other, the 10% bonus is the same. Obviously, he's showing it for based on however much you're depositing with him to the contract.
The initial upfront deposit or investment amount.
Yeah, and you've got your income for life. Now, The problem is that to me, this is not teaching us and sharing us the entire picture. And that's something I have a problem with. Now, whether he's actually disclosing all of that while he's talking, I don't know, because I'm not going to listen to him. I just find some of this stuff to be unintentionally misleading. And there's only a couple of TikTokers. I'm going to call them out. Ron Sneller, you do a good job. When I see your stuff, you've got a lot of good information that's on your post. It's a quick screenshot. It shows here's how much you put in over a period of time. Here's what you could generally receive. I could do the math. I could see where it's coming from. I don't even need to know the product. I just know he's disclosing it right. And he gets people's attention. He does a lot of business because of that. When I look at this, though, here's the thing, and it's a big key with insurance companies. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
Exactly.
And I think we're gonna say that over and over and over again. And don't mistake the sizzle for the steak. And the problem is that this is all sizzle right now. Because this income for life, I don't know when that's triggered. That seems to be a very high distribution rate.
I don't think, I mean, obviously income for life, that the income that they're projecting is over your entire lifespan, right? So to 75, 85, whatever they're projecting out. Please don't.
Is that a cumulative number?
That's what I believe. I don't know of any place you can put $1 million and get 367, 8,000 a year.
Assuming no growth at all whatsoever, that's a 36% annual distribution rate, assuming it's annual.
Right.
That
so
is
this has
insane.
to be this is right. So obviously this is over whatever your expected lifetime is, which also makes this a little bit misleading, because if you're not, really adept, or you're not thinking, or you don't catch it right away, this sounds like, holy crap, I got $1 million and I can put it in this annuity. I get $100,000 bonus. Cool. And then I get $370,000 every year for life. And that's not how this works at all. And and you're right, they don't disclose how long you're taking income for. They don't disclose, actually a lot of things they don't disclose on this. But this is probably one of the most misleading, disingenuous things I've ever seen.
Agreed. Thank you. And by the way, thank you for actually being able to have the tolerance to listen into these guys to make sure that we actually have the full picture, but they're certainly not showing the full picture in their numbers here, because it does not add up in my mind. And I'm like, where are they even assuming all this is coming from? And by the way, we are fans of annuities. We do like them.
Oh yeah. Annuities are great when they're used appropriately and understood appropriately.
Yes. And the neat thing is that we don't need to make them any better. We don't have to. We don't have to do all this crap to understand the value of what annuities can do. Now, let's give an example of what annuities can do, which is, and I like, there's this guy, Stan Hathcock. He's called the Annuity Man. I think that's his name. That's his tagline, I think it is. He's written a number of books, and I like them. And he says, don't buy annuities for what they might do, buy them for what they will do. Look at the contractual guarantees. Look at all the different components of it. And that's why, for me, I'm looking at and annuities, they're not that complicated, which is one of the best things I could say about annuities. They're not that now, once we get into the indexing options, okay, those usually go over my head. I've got a guy. I call him. I say, and I'll just say, Charlie, I'm calling you. What the hell is this? Because I don't understand it. And he understands this stuff cold.
Even the indexing options, if you want to really sit down and, if you care enough, they're not that complicated to learn. It adds another layer to it.
Right.
And, in all reality, you probably shouldn't ever buy something you don't totally understand. So if you're going to buy an indexed annuity of any kind, try to at least make sure that you understand how it works and what it is that you're buying before you actually purchase one.
Right. And a good agent will go through all the different components, and here's how it works. Here's how this thing works. Here's how that thing works. And it's not that difficult of a conversation. And in fact, just a reference, I had to look back on in my CLU textbook. I have one, and it's called life insurance, individual life insurance. And out of the 28 chapters, the last chapter, chapter 28, is about annuities. The rest of it is all about life insurance, which shows how much more complex life insurance is compared to annuities. Annuities are very simple. You put money in, you generally are going to wait before you take your distributions. You begin taking distributions at a later time, and those distributions are based on a certain growth factor and or a contract value, whatever it's going to be. And you're going to get a certain payout based on the age you begin taking those distributions. And typically, I look at a benchmark. Generally, at age 65, you're able to take out 5% of the highest value that's in that contract, whatever that happens to be. And that's a general rule. But here's what's interesting is that sometimes to create the sizzle, companies will finagle the formula to make them even look more attractive. So take that bonus. That bonus was only illustrating 10%.
Right.
There's other companies, and if I remember it right, and this is why I don't call out companies necessarily, because if I get it wrong, I don't want someone to say, David, you got it wrong. You need to go fix your thing here. I think there's one company that offered like a 22% bonus.
Yeah, I've seen them close to that. Usually it's 10%, though. That's a pretty standard rate, I feel like. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen 22%. I've seen, 15, 17%, 7 to 10% seems to be the norm.
And that would be for a possible cash on cash bonus, an actual cash infusion, as
Right.
opposed to a bonus to what is called in the industry a bonus to the income base, which is
Right.
not real money. What that is that goes into the annuity calculation. So let's use that $1 million example. Hey, I'd love to do $1 million annuities. That's a beautiful sale to make. So if you put in $1 million, and if they say you're going to get a 22% bonus, I'm going to use that number just to be consistent. It's not $220,000 being credited. It's basically saying we're going to base your income calculation based on 1,220,000 as opposed to being based on $1 million. And then we're going to let this income base grow at a certain amount, either by a fixed amount each year or by however the indexes perform. And then when you begin taking the distribution, you're going to take it according to this formula, which might not be 5%. It might be 3% or whatever. There's a different way that they'll make the formulas work because they want the agents selling based on the illustration or based on the glossy brochure. Look how generous this life insurance company is to give you so much money for you to get started in the annuity. And frankly, it's just, I find them misleading for those agents that only sell by illustration or only sell by the literature. There's problems there. I just got to say. Now, so the important thing is that what is the formula behind the annuity payout? I am looking at what am I going to expect when I want to begin the income stream. That's the most important part. Everything else is smoke and mirrors. It almost doesn't matter. Now, they might say you're going to have this benefit base and this withdrawal rate, and this way, this is what you'll have. I like seeing that. Yet, if the indexes do a little bit better, you're going to get a little bit better income. I like seeing that too. I like seeing what's guaranteed and what is also possible. But base it on the income, not based on all the glitter and the smoke and mirrors and all that stuff. I can see right through all that garbage.
Yeah. And then the truth is that the actual realization is probably going to be somewhere in the middle between the illustration and the guarantee.
Could be. It depends on how rich the guarantees are.
Right.
So for example, now this was a long time ago, and I happen to remember this. Remember, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I remember selling a variable annuity. It was like 15, 16 years ago. This is before the 2008 crash. And I've referenced it before in the past. It was a MetLife. It was a great contract. It was a 666 annuity.
Oh, yeah.
You got it. You had your 6% bonus. You had your 6% annual step up, which means every year that you don't take income, your benefit base will go up at least by 6% or the higher market value, whatever the investments did. And then when you do take income, it will be 6% based on that. So what's the problem?
Well,
There's no such thing as a free lunch.
There's a reason MetLife isn't in business anymore. Well,
no. They got too big for their britches. They became a SIFI, That's the designate a strategically important financial institution, and they
Right.
had to basically divest because they didn't want all that government oversight on everything that they were doing. So they were very successful at what they were doing. But I want to give a quick example of how they priced this annuity compared to their standard one. Because within annuity, there's different levels of fees. And I'm only going to talk about one level of fee because it was called the mortality and expense charge. And this is a charge that basically allows you at any time, you can annuitize the contract, which basically means you give up complete control of the balance and you say, company, send me a lifetime income for the rest of my life. There's a fee to have that contract. That's what that's called. Their standard annuity, I think it was 1.15% per year based on the balance.
Mm-hmm.
And the bonus one, I think it was 1.85%. So the difference is 70 basis points, 0.7% per year. And assuming that the contract stayed flat, which it wouldn't, the contract would grow and do whatever it does. But
Right.
if it just stayed flat, in 10 years, your 6% bonus was repaid by 7% total charges. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Insurance companies are very good at making sure they make money. They want attractive products that you'll buy, but they're not a nonprofit organization, and neither am I.
Well,
And
and
so,
neither do you want them to be.
right, we need them to make money so that they can actually pay out their promised benefits. Absolutely,
And
which
that's the
was
thing
a
that always bothers me is people always complain about how, insurance companies make all this money and this and that. Okay, cool. Well, then, you go open your own insurance company and you lose money and then try to pay out claims, and we'll see how well you do.
yeah. There's 4 rules to financial institutions, all of them, and we can include banks, insurance companies, Wall Street, government. They all follow these 4 rules. The first one is they want all your money. They want all of your money on a continuous basis. They want to hold on to it for as long as possible, and when it's time for you to get at it, they want to give back as little as possible. Those
Correct.
are the 4 rules of financial institutions, and annuities fit very well within those as long as your interests are aligned. And so there's definitely a place for it, but we need the company to stay in business so that they'll deliver on the promised benefits. Um, Now, there's another part. Okay, when something looks too good to be true. So the first part to look at is what are the costs, what are the fees, and compared to what. And unfortunately, I'm not sure if the public is ready to do their own homework on that. And it's not fair for to expect the public to be able to do that. A good agent should be able to do that. A good agent, in my opinion, would actually say that this is how these things work. These are the different components. They wouldn't put any extra emphasis. Look how great this is. You're going to get a 10% bonus. So what? It almost doesn't matter. But what we got to look at is if something looks too good to be true, what are the ratings of that company? There are some companies that what they tend to do is I believe that they buy their business and they buy it by having some outrageous offerings. And right now there's one company, I think they're in some trouble. It's not it's not hidden news or anything like that. SILAC, I forgot what it stands for, but they're in trouble. And I remember being on one of their webinars for agents, and I asked one of their actuaries, and just asking them, why don't you have a greater capital position? You're rated in somewhere in the B rated rating somewhere, and they're offering all these incredible bonuses, all these incredible performance on their contracts. Like, why don't you have a greater capital position? And the answer was, if we wanted it and we felt the need to, we would. I've never heard an actuary lie to me, but I'm considering that a lie, and what a great sales line on their behalf. And I'm basically saying BS. I ain't buying that. What a joke. Usually actuaries, the data is the data is the data, and I expected a truthful answer, but this was a marketing call, so I knew they'd skip over something there. But ratings are important. And for me, for the larger the balance and the longer you want this annuity to pay out, the ratings are so much more important. And I would never do anything with less than at least an A- rating.
Well,
An A- rating with A and best or better.
that's funny you mentioned that because I was on another live either on YouTube or TikTok or whatever thing that everybody uses these days, and somebody was like, we only use companies that are A- rated or better. Well, good for you. I hope you only use companies that are A minus rated or better, because otherwise, uh, your clients may be up a creek without a paddle. When it comes time to do, using the annuities or the life insurance or the whatever financial product it is. But I mean, most of these companies, even ones that are B plus plus and what, they have so many, and they're reinsured and all, they're backed by so many different institutions and have so much assets that they're generally pretty safe. But yeah, anybody that's A rated or better is going to be good. And if I certainly wouldn't use anybody with less than an A rating. But I mean, I just think it's funny that all these people come on like it's some badge of honor that they only use companies that are A rated or better. I don't know anybody that doesn't. So
There's some, but it also depends on what the purpose of the annuity is. So sometimes there's some good deals for MIGAs, multi-year guaranteed annuities, and as long as you're only doing it for a short period of time, let's say 3 or 4 years, and they've got a really good rate, okay, I can see that potential there. I still wouldn't want to do it for anything more than a hundred
right,
thousand
nothing
dollars or
long
so.
term. Yeah, for sure,
Yeah,
nothing long term.
nothing long term. I'm not worried about the other riders and things. It's purely an interest rate play. That can work. Um, but there's been in recent news. The other one being oh, is it Colorado Bankers? It's something, but anyway, they've been in receivership for like 2 or 3 years now, going through some issues there. So insurance companies, yes, there is the tendency that they should be bought out if they come into real trouble, that another company will come in and save them. But at the same time, sometimes that doesn't happen. Colorado Bankers is one of those companies right now. So ratings I consider to be very important, and it should be part of every agent's due diligence on the companies that they offer. And sometimes ratings do improve.
Oh,
Equitrust,
for
if I
sure.
remember
Yeah.
right, they Equitrust just increased. I think they're an A minus rating now. They used to be a B plus plus, good solid company, but always just a slight under where I was comfortable with. But now A minus, that's good. They're on their way up. Athene used to
Yeah.
be rated in the Bs, and now they're an A plus. I think now. I can't remember exactly where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Some people only want companies that are A plus plus or whatever. I'm going to push back on that a little bit too. Not just the B rated companies and below, being crappy, but if you have a company that's A plus plus versus an A plus or an A, they're all financially strong companies. And I often run into a case where people are willing to pay extra just for a name, just because they're A plus plus or for a name. Now, this happens certainly in Medicare. This happens in life insurance. This happens in a lot of things that I've dealt with, where people will overpay for the exact same product, or even a product that maybe performs lesser, just because of
Right.
the name of a company, or because they're A plus plus rated versus A plus rated. I mean, that is kind of strange and a little bit silly to me, when the product with the A plus company that may not be as much of a name brand is going to be exactly what you need and is going to perform better, but you pick the one with the other company because you know who they are. I mean, I understand, familiarity with things and people have their comfort levels and stuff like that. But I mean, seriously, sometimes, and I've seen it, sometimes these companies like purposefully overprice things because they are who they are and they can get away with it.
Back when I was a career agent with a Mother Mutual, let's leave it at that. I looked at their annuity portfolio. I'm like, what's the point? Why would I buy this? Why would I sell this? First of all, the payout to the agent wasn't quite as good, although there was no haircuts on that, which means there was no payout grids to share the
Right.
commissions with. Um, but at the same time, I'm like, why would anybody buy this? I don't understand what the point was. So I would have never offered those unless there's a very specific feature in the contract language or something that would make it stand out to say this is what you need to do. Otherwise, what would be the point? I could still broker with other approved companies at that point and give them a better value proposition than I could from the in-house product line. It was very interesting there. I want to talk a little bit about, because one of the things that's confusing sometimes about annuities is the different percentages and what each percentage thing means.
Yeah.
It gets really confusing and it gets confusing even for me sometimes. And yeah, I'm a nerd, but even then, after a while, I got to go and ask some questions myself. So the first part is a distribution rate. Now, that's not a rate of return, but the distribution rate is how much of your benefit base, whatever that is, that could be your cash value, that could be a phantom value that the insurance company will let you base your income off of, whatever that is. And you can get a distribution rate based on that amount. And that's usually about 5%, and it might increase by 0.1% each year you delay until you begin taking that income. So, it might be 5.5% when you're age 70 or something. That amount can go lower if it's a joint contract. If you have a joint life contract, then it's going to go based on the younger spouse. I have not yet seen a joint contract that's based on the older spouse. They always pay it off based on the younger spouse, life expectancy. So that's the first percentage that's often talked about. Then you've got all the different things around these cap rates and spreads and participate. These are all the functions of the interest rates, indexed interest that function within the contract. And you can have different allocations within different index segments. We could get as complex there as you really want to. I really hate that part. But there's one other part that showed up, and this is a company that I do represent. I blocked them out. Not that I really needed to, but it was an interesting thing because I was doing joint work with an agent here in the LA area, and we're meeting with this lady, and she had gone to someone else's presentation. And she liked the product, but didn't like the guy. I'm like, okay, no
Fair
problem.
enough.
In fact, every once in a while, I push back on her a little bit. Say, look, if you really want this product, go talk to him. No, I'll never do business with him. Like, okay. But she liked the presentation he gave. She just didn't like him. So anyway, I'm going to see if I can zoom in here because they talked about these certain index strategies. And what she thought this minimum guaranteed participation rate meant was that if the market goes up 10%, you also get that 10%. But that's not what it means. So in this instance, the current participation rate, this says 140% for whatever this one is. This is the BNP Paribas, whatever it is. I don't even know. It's a great set of letters. But let's suppose if that, based on a current participation rate of 140%, if it did 10%, you would get 14. Okay. And they've got their pricing to actually make that happen. I do trust, the company's going to pay that out. If they put that in writing, they'll do that as long as the index actually did that performance. But what this minimum guaranteed participation rate says is that if the market did 10, you're guaranteed to have a minimum of 10% of what the market did, not
Correct.
10% movement of the market. It was so easy that for a few hours, it's like, what is this? And I got confused on this thing. And so when you have a whole bunch of like this is an allocation percentage here on the left side. We got these spread percentages. It's so easy when you get too many percentages next to each other. It's easy to conflate them just because, at least for me, the way my mind works, I end up thinking that they're all kind of the same. They're all in the same line. What do they really mean? So that was an interesting one that, I called my guy Charlie, and I said, Charlie, just make sure I'm on the right track here.
Yeah. So let's just make this really clear. So the current participation rate on that top line is 140%. So whatever the index does, you're going to get 140% participation rate. And that's guaranteed, that's the current thing. That's not necessarily guaranteed, though. The only thing that they're guaranteeing is that over time, the 140 can go down, but it can't go any lower than 10%.
Yeah, which would really suck at that point. Let's be fair. If I had, what would that percentage be? Like a 95% lowering of the participation? Who would want that? Quite frankly, I don't even know why they put that box in there. It's additional noise. It gets in the way. What? It's like, thanks for this minimum benefit. Just in case you guys screw up. What is this for? I'd rather have them say zero, have them say nothing, take that thing away and make it clearer for the rest of us. And you know, yeah. So sometimes the noise of some of this stuff gets in the way, and sometimes, and I really hope this doesn't happen to consumers. I have a feeling that it does, but that with consumers, you give them so much information that they finally think that, oh, benefit, 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 benefit. Okay, fine. I'll go ahead and buy. I don't understand it all, but you seem like you really do. You really like this thing. You think it's good for me. I'll go ahead and do it. It's a problem. I want people to understand what it is that they have so that they
Right.
understand the nature of it. And by the way, here's the thing though, and I'm gonna scroll back here to the left. This is a 1 year point to point.
Right.
At
So
the
that's
end
what I
of the
was saying
year,
is that, they're only guaranteeing at 140% for this year.
yes.
After that, you're guaranteed 10%. You can't be lower than 10%, but only this year, only this 1 year, are you going to
Yeah.
are you actually going to get the 140%? Now, let's be realistic. They're probably not going to drop it all the way to the 10% minimum guaranteed. I mean, you'd have a lot of really pissed off people and maybe some class actions. Who knows what would happen? But I mean, could they realistically pull it back, even down to 100% or 110 or 80%? They could do that, and that would be justified, at least in the insurance company's mind. That would be justifiable. But
Yeah.
just keep in mind that 140% participation rate is only guaranteed for 1 year, and if the index that you're in happens to be down that year, then you're getting zero anyway. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So and zero can be your hero, especially with annuities, and we're okay
right,
with that. But here's the thing: is that these all have other functions that happen behind the scenes, right? Because they're based on the current interest rate market. It's going to be based on whatever the pricing of these stock market options are, and then the overhead to manage that whole thing. Because none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. So there's other costs that have to be factored in that all get priced into how these options are priced to do that. Hey there, Alonzo. Glad to see you. Salute to you. And those are the 1 year point to point give us the opportunity to have a review with our clients to reallocate. Absolutely. And the thing too is that the client will get a statement right before they're going to, like, usually 30 days before, saying your index allocation is due to be renewed. You can change your allocation. You can change it to the fixed bucket. There's all kinds of things you can do. But within there, the company does disclose everything you can do.
right.
That doesn't mean they should do it, but they do disclose here's what you can do.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with this. I just want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with this right here. I'm kind of poking fun at it, but I mean, there's nothing wrong necessarily. I mean, if you can get 140% participation rate for a year, and the index happens to do well, that's great. But just be aware that this is not always going to pay 140%. A participation rate, and that your minimum guaranteed is only 10%. So it's just something to be aware of, and understand the language and how these things are constructed. But in reality, they're probably not going to again drop it to the 10%. But would they be able to pull it back from the 140? Sure.
Yeah. The same thing like here with the other columns next to it here. So we have the current rate on the left side and a minimum guaranteed rate. Thanks. And now these two obviously didn't have that, so it's not applicable. Then on the other side, current annual spread, which is I look at as an interest rate deduction, because let's suppose the market does 10%, we have a spread of 3. You're not going to get the whole 10. You're going to get 7. You're going to get the difference between what the market did and what the spread is. And there's a maximum guaranteed annual spread. Again, that didn't apply here. It's 0%, but it would show, well, here's what the maximum spread would be. So there's all these different things. And quite frankly, the more that we get into, I call this getting into the weeds. The more we get into the weeds of this stuff, the more it tends to confuse people. Yet we still need to know the nature of the beast of what we have going on. Hey, Aldo, glad to see you, my friend. Thanks for tuning in. Now, there's something else because these are some of the more egregious things that I've seen. There's one more part, and it's California based. And the California stuff is that California, in the last few years, we've passed a number of laws, and I'm pretty sure they mean well. But gosh darn it, there's always certain unintended consequences of some of these laws. And so some of these laws have to do, I believe, with HIPAA, healthcare disclosures, and insurance companies be able to get access to information. So what happens now is that years ago, back when I first started selling annuities, 20 years ago, in fact, I celebrated 20 years as an insurance agent last week. All you got to do to make it in this business is last. And but back then, we used to have was it nursing home confinement waiver of surrender charges, which means that if you had to be confined in a nursing home, you could get access to as much of your annuity as you need to without a surrender charge, meaning the house rules, the insurance company's costs. That doesn't mean it's tax free. It just means that you could get access to money without paying the insurance company any additional funds. Well, that's almost all but gone. There's so many annuities, particularly for California here. I don't need that on the screen anymore, but particularly California, that basically say for like a nursing home confinement or a chronic illness doubler, look for that fine print. And it basically says, and the same company I just showed you here says, enhanced income benefit not available in California. In this case, it lists a number of other states. California, there is a long-term care task force. And a couple of years ago, I actually brought this part up. I said, look, California has problems with living benefit riders being approved for anybody that is buying a policy that is age 65 and older and on annuity contracts. I want this fixed. I have not heard anything new on this. It's been a couple of years. Every time I see the guy, I bring it up. What's the status on this? Because this is not what lawmakers and what regulators should be doing, which is making things worse for the consumer. And I don't like it when laws have unintended consequences. I want them to restore these options back. And then ideally, I would imagine this, if the law is restored back for Californians, then all insurance companies would amend all of their policies. I've seen this happen before. They would say all of them get to be have this new rider put on with no additional cost or anything. They now get them all as of a certain effective date. I've seen something like that happen before with a company, and they would offer something and they said, we've now made it retroactive for all policies. So I'd love to see that happen, but because it's in the fine print, not every agent may necessarily understand that. So they might say it's got all these bells and whistles and this bell and whistle and this stuff. And you look at the fine print, you realize, oh no, you're a California resident. It's not in there. So that's an annoying part. And again, you just need people that are good agents that are looking out for you, that are giving you the truth of the nature of what we're talking about. So just a little thing there. It's annoying. But I will say this, for California, for this company and this contract, for example, they have an amended surrender charge schedule. So instead of being the normal surrender charge that is for the rest of the country, it's amended and it's a little bit shorter and a little bit less. So they make up for it in a different way. But yeah, California, we have to be careful of what people are buying, making sure they actually understand everything, because not all of the things that are available in every other state are the same as every other state. So we got to make sure that we know exactly what happens there.
That applies in some cases to New York as well.
Oh, especially New York. Well, in New York, if anybody's listening, New York, it has a very special thing. They're like the redheaded stepchild because of all the regulations here. And I
it's awful,
really don't. It's terrible. They basically, in order to be competitive, insurance companies have to create complete insurance companies as separate divisions just to do business in New York. And they've got their own reserve requirements and disclosure, all this stuff. And it's a nightmare. It really is. I almost never want to do business in New York, but never say never. And Alonzo, my friend, yes, New York is annoying as at home state. Hey, man, I don't know how you do it, but I also know, I think Alonzo has a couple of resident licenses. But you can have multiple resident licenses. I think he's got one for Connecticut. And all you need is a home. You have your home resident and you have your business resident. And believe me, it's completely legal. You can do that. It's completely in line with the insurance code. So I think I've covered just about everything I had on my notes here.
We want to talk a little, I know we talked about the participation rates. So we want to talk a little bit about cap rates.
They're along the same lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, and cap rates can go up and down. Now, I remember when I first started paying attention to Index Universal Life, the top cap rate for the S&P 500, and by the way, this is at a time when only the S&P 500 was the available index. I think they were as high as 16% of a cap rate. Then slowly, with interest rates or maybe the cost of the options, whatever the pricing is, kept going lower and lower and lower. Now I think the S&P 500, I'm sure it's gone up again. I bet it's about 11% right now if we were to get a new IUL today.
Yeah, I
But
don't know. I'd have to look. It might be 9 to 11 probably.
9 to 11, that's a safe range. But with annuities, because of the higher reserve requirements, they're not going to be nearly as high as the life insurance indexing. So with lately, I think the S&P, I think they're topping around 6% maybe for annuities for the annual S&P 500 point to point. It could be that. Don't quote me. This is not a solicitation. You cannot hold me accountable. This is for public information, educational purposes only. You cannot take me to court. And in a way, I say this
Not
because,
financial advice.
well, we don't have an engagement agreement with whoever's listening. Therefore,
Right.
I'm very cautious on that because I was actually talking to a prestigious colleague of mine yesterday, and he said he might be able to get me to be an expert witness on a possible case here in California. It deals with annuities, and apparently, the poor guy, he was promoting himself as a fiduciary advisor and selling it. And I'm just like that poor fool. But yet, and lately I've become very well versed. I will never say expert. I am very well versed regarding fiduciary duty, fiduciary rules and laws and everything. And so I might be able to get a little bit of a gig of doing some expert witness work. That would be a nice thing to add to my curriculum vitae. That'd be cool. But anyway, yeah, it's just there's so many different things that are moving parts that if you're looking at these annuities for performance, realize that what they are today and when they renew are going to be two separate things. In fact, let me pull this up real quick. I'm going to move my window here and hopefully not lose eye contact. But there, when I was looking up things for, I think it was a week ago or so, here it is. I went back in time because I went to find the, there's this annuity that I could not understand for the life of me. And the company no longer offers it anymore. So I had to go through the internet Wayback Machine to find it, just to refresh my memory. And since they don't offer it anymore, I don't mind. I'm going to share my screen here. This thing was called the American National. In fact, this is before they were bought, so this is definitely old. The Value Lock 10 indexed annuity. This thing was so confusing to me. The Value Lock 10 indexed annuity provides flexibility to respond to economic changes by giving you the ability to lock in interest earnings related to changes in index performance at any time during the 10-year indexing term. It just looks like, okay, anytime. What do you mean? Can I do that once a year? Or can I only do it once over the 10-year period? And I think you can only do it once over the 10-year period. It's not like you can just lock it in. This is not, what was that one show? I forgot. It was, okay, it's that British woman, and you'd stack up the things and you'd bank it. And because so you lock it in.
Gosh darn it. Come on, Alonzo, help us out.
I don't know if Alonzo would know this one. The Weakest Link. That was it.
Yeah, Weakest Link. There it is.
The Weakest Link. And it's like, so you stack it up and then you bank it. And I'm like, is that what this is doing? I don't know. So anyway, yeah, downside protection. You can't lose money. But yet I'm like, how does the growth go? Anyway, this thing had the same, and this is why I was thinking this, because initial premium, 100,000. And I don't know what this, you can lock in 70% of the index earnings here in year 7. After that, I don't know. This thing was so confusing. And here's the thing. If I can't understand it, I'm not selling it. There's a reason why it's not on the company's menu anymore. They do not have this thing anymore. And
so, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like playing roulette with this annuity. So you can, the first year, if you want to, this is how it sounds to me. If you want to lock it the first year, you get 10% of whatever the index did that first year. Or you can wait until year 2 and take 20%. Or you can wait all the way until year 10 and wait and get 100%. The problem here is that if the index only does 2% in the 10th year, you're getting 100% of 2%. So
yeah, I don't know. That's the problem. And there's too many moving parts to me. And here's the thing. At the time, the company was paying like a commission. I think it was 8.5% between this one, and then they have their staple now, which is their strategy index annuity, 7-year and 10-year. I'm looking at the 10-year products, and that one also paid 8.5%. I can understand that one. I couldn't understand this one for the life of me. I'm like, what the hell is this thing? And if I can't understand it, I can't sell it. And I'm hoping that that's why it's not on the menu anymore, because if agents don't sell it, they can't keep it on the books. You have to have certain filing requirements, certain reserve for on these things. But the only exception with your analogy, which might be it, I wish I could correct you if you were wrong. I don't know, because I can't understand the damn thing.
Well, I
But
think
roulette does imply loss.
I think that is how it works, because even if you read down a little further, it says after the lock-in rate, they scroll back up. After the lock-in rate, they credit you. There it is. Yeah, after the lock-in rate, they credit you a fixed rate. So you get your 1 year of maybe hopefully good gains, and then after that, they give you a fixed rate. So their example here is there.
But the problem is that that's still step one, because there's still two more steps that we didn't even cover.
Right.
Step two, determine the 10-year value of what it is. So it has to be averaged over a 10-year period. I think that's what they mean. And then we determine the value lock rate. I'm like, things too damn confusing. Don't give me more homework than I need to. I can't sell something that I can't understand. And if I can't understand it and explain it, forget it. It ain't happening.
And that goes back to the thing that I said to begin with. If you don't understand what it is that you're buying or investing in, don't buy it.
Don't buy it. Oh man, we could save so many headaches and heartaches and everything. I mean, we want our clients to understand what they're getting into. And I think we're biased, of course, right? We're highly biased. And the fact that we do it right, I want the rest of the industry to rise up and do better. Make sure that the client understands that some of the stuff is just sizzle. And the sizzle has to be in context of what is the steak? Is the steak good enough, or is it, just a bone? Whatever. I try to figure out the right analogy on that. But we need to make sure. But the thing is that insurance companies are not charitable organizations. It's not that they're out to get you. It's that they have everything priced in there so that they profit as well. So if they're talking about all this bonus stuff,
it's just like any other for-profit business, right? They're going to have it priced so that they can sell it to you and still make some money. It's whether it's a grocery store, a restaurant, a fidget spinner maker, or whatever, clock maker, whatever it is. They're all going to have things priced in so that they can make money. That's the point of being in business. You're not in business to lose money, right? So, I mean, of course, they have to make money, and that's not a bad thing. A lot of people hate, insurance companies because they make money, and everybody thinks that insurance companies are screwing them over and ripping them off and this and that. Well, again, I always go back to the part that, if you feel like, you're getting screwed and ripped off by the insurance company, you better darn well hope that they're making a ton of money so that they can pay your claim when you file it.
Yes. That's a big part of it. Now, here's the other part too, is that sometimes there's contracts that we don't necessarily understand what the purpose of them are. So like that value lock, that is a pure accumulation play.
Right.
But if I can't explain exactly how it works, forget it. I'm still not selling it. But there are contracts that are for accumulation purposes. So if we understand what the mechanism, what the purpose of the contract is, we can make a far better decision as agents of how does each one play into a consumer's best interest. Now, Tracy Lonsbury, hey, appreciate you watching. You hit like for me. Appreciate that.
Hey, Tracy, what's going on, man?
Yeah, he did a webinar, and I think he did it on my favorite annuity. And in a way, he rightfully trashed it only because he put the wrong annuity in context with the annuity that he would have, based on the problem he was trying to solve. Okay. The annuity that I happen to like is not based on income necessarily. I like that one based on let's get out 10% level each and every year as a distribution without surrender charges, so that we can then use that money to fund other things such as life insurance, as we talked about. It has a very particular purpose. And then at the end, there was no lifetime benefit rider fee. And then there's some residual benefit based on whatever's remaining in the contract.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So, a lot of people might poo-poo a certain product or an annuity and say, this is the most awful garbage and this is trash and this is that, just because, they don't understand it or they don't like it or it's not for their particular situation or client. The insurance companies and any company makes different products for different people and for different reasons. So, Just because one
Yes.
product isn't for you and your client doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense for another client and their strategy and what they're trying to do with that money for that period of time. So for the purpose of what you're trying to look to do something for, it may look like, why would anybody want to do this? This is the most awful design product in the world. But in another situation, and I've actually had this happen where I've kind of crapped on a product and then thought about, and then had a client come to me and I'm like, oh my gosh, this product that I was crapping on because I thought it was so stupid actually works for this client. So, I mean, there's right. So they make different products for different reasons and for different situations. So it's never a cookie cutter thing. It's never a one size fits all. There's, even if you hate a certain product, it may actually be a benefit to somebody in a different situation. It just depends on, and right. That's the whole point of supposedly being a fiduciary. So.
Oh, no. Remember, we defined that. We're going to say the point of being a professional that is looking for your client's best interest, whatever label we want to call it. I call that a professional's code.
Right.
And should we here, thank you very much for watching here. My main thing is to make sure, where does the product fit? What is it designed for it to be the best use? Now, strange enough, I look at the same way as every once in a while, and that's been a long time, but every once in a while I'll teach Sunday school. And when I prepare a Sunday school lesson, I'm going to read the lesson in advance, of course. And then I can figure out, who is this lesson designed for? Who needs to hear this message? That's what I want to kind of bring home to. And then figuring out, okay, the different roles of the people that are in the audience, because we've got ministers, we've got elders, we got all kinds of different people. How do we take this same message and apply it to the people we minister to, right? And by the way, there's this one time I got this lesson and I hated it. I could poo-poo about this because I'm getting a little personal here, but it all applies. This message was all about full-time missionary work. And I was a full-time LDS missionary. I spent my 2 years in Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky. That's where I picked up a little bit of twang, but at least I know how to turn it on and turn it off. But I read this lesson, and the thing was preaching to the choir. I went on my mission when I was 21, not 18 or 19 is what the standard is now. I waited a little bit. I had some things I needed to figure out in my life. And I'm reading this lesson like, would this have made any difference to me being 18 or 19 years old? And my answer was no. This would not have helped me at all whatsoever to make a change from being against doing full-time missionary work to doing full-time missionary work. And if that's the case, then what I do is I adjusted that lesson for the audience. Now, we can't necessarily do that with annuity contracts, but we make sure that whatever we're looking to do, it has to fit who you're working with.
Right. You're not gonna change the contract and how the product works, right? That's all already set in stone. But
yeah, I wish I could line out and say it works like this, handwrite it in, and send it to the company and have them accept it. Wouldn't that be beautiful? And by the way, let's change it on our commission structure too. But let's add a couple of zeros, right?
Well, while you're at it.
Well, we might as well, right? No, we don't have that kind of power here. Would be nice. Hey, Big Discussion 76. Glad you're here.
What's going on?
So anyway, no, annuities, they're wonderful instruments as they are, as long as we know what problem is this contract designed to solve and what ages is it best for? What are the benefits of using this? How can I incorporate this with other products? There's so many different questions to ask to make sure that even what might look like a poor product could be the best product if properly, I hate the phrase, if properly designed and structured, but
I wouldn't even say properly especially with an annuity, I wouldn't even say properly designed and structured, but properly implemented in the right or correct situation.
Yeah. So, I mean, for example, the annuity that Tracy he did his a video on a couple of weeks ago, it's not something I would sell as a standalone. To me, that one is one in conjunction with funding something else. And what you have in the meantime is principal protection and a way to get some indexed earnings. And then you can fund something else along with it. So there's a purpose for it. But if you're going to say, David, do you want to solve lifetime income using that one? Like, no, that would not be the contract to use for that. This contract has a specific place. It could also probably be used for instead of, because you can't do requirement distributions over your remaining lifetime anymore. If you inherit something, you have to do it over a 10-year period. Put it in this thing. if the company will do it. I haven't even checked with them. I would see this contract as a great way to do that, because you could distribute the whole thing over 10 years, 10% a year, level it out, and you stretch out the tax liabilities over those 10 years. So there's so many other ways that different contracts can work depending on what are we trying to solve for. So anyway, I think we're pretty much coming up at the top of the hour. I can't think of much of anything else that we've missed.
Yeah,
other than
no, there's always, this was a good topic. I'm glad we did this today. I think that there's always something a little bit more you can go in detail on and talk about, but we did a pretty good job, at least touching on the basics and an overview of, annuities and how they work and what they can be used for. And maybe we can do, another one about some other stuff around annuities at another time. But
well,
yeah.
Kurt being missing, Kurt is an IMO for annuities, and he's got these structured secondary market annuities.
Yeah.
So he's got some expertise in that. It's something that I'm not as familiar with. So we should bring
Yeah,
him.
I'd like to have, and that was unfortunate. I'd like to have Kurt on here with us for that, and that's why one of the reasons I was saying maybe we have another one of these, because we can get Kurt's opinion and get him involved and stuff like that. And he's kind of even more of an annuity expert and involved with this stuff than we are. So yeah, I think that would be a great follow-up episode to this.
Okay, so Alonzo asks, can you guys touch on RILAs, registered index linked annuities? These I am not nearly as familiar with. I have not really seen them. I have not studied them. Here's the thing. The main thing is that you have to be a registered representative. You have to be FINRA licensed with either a Series 6 or a 7 to offer them. So they're a registered product, which means for me, automatically, my bias is I can't like them because I'm not registered to sell them. Right? That means everything else is bad, right? Yeah. So no. But here's the thing is that they tend to work on the basis that you can lose principal.
Right.
But yet there's a downside floor to it, but it's not zero. It's like you can lose up to 10% or something like that. I was quoted in an investment news article, and maybe I'll put this in the comment or in the video description, where the SEC came out with a bulletin regarding fixed index annuities. This is back in 2018, 2019. But they called them fixed index annuities when they were really describing was RILAs, these registered index linked annuities or buffer annuities. And so there was a major faux pas on the behalf of the SEC, unless they're trying to make sure that consumers understand that these contracts are different from index annuities. And I'm hoping that the misnomer was intentional to get people's attention.
In some ways I can understand. So FIAs, you only need a life license to sell it. And I can see the confusion because it does sound a lot like a FIA, right? Because in a sense, with a fixed index annuity FIA, you can get a bonus on top of it, which you do pay a small premium for. So in essence, if the index is down and you get zero, you still would have to pay, which is the floor, you'd still have to pay that participation bonus to get the extra participation rate in it. So in essence, you could actually lose money, even in a FIA, based on the extra that you're paying to participate in the bonus. So I can kind of see how that would be confused with this, especially if there's a floor and you can still kind of lose money. So that is a little bit similar in a way, but anything, the big difference is that a FIA isn't directly tied to the market so much as where anything that requires a securities license is going to be more directly tied to the market in a specific fund.
Right. The fixed indexed annuities will track an index, but you're not invested in the index. So
Correct.
You're not along for the ups and downs. And basically in a 1 year point to point, you start with 1 year. At the end of 1 year, whatever it did, whatever it's a gain, you get a percentage of that. It could be flat. It could also, if it lost, you still lose nothing. So that's how that part works. But
unless you have
that's a registered product.
Right, you're flat unless, like I said, you have that enhanced participation rider that you pay a bonus for. Because
and that would also be for IUL. That's also called a multiplier bonus or multiplier fee. because you're paying a
Correct.
fee to participate in those index programs that basically you're paying a guaranteed fee to the company in order to get the potential of an enhanced return if it
Yes.
happens.
There you go.
So Nicholas, thank you. Glad you're here. So yeah, RILAs, you do need a securities license. They are offered by prospectus. You've got to understand what's in the prospectus in there, at least in terms of the fees, the risks, the returns, the costs, all of that, all being factored in to see what that program really looks like and works like. And keep in mind that those people who are securities licensed, they like those kinds of things. They like it's something that we never talked about, which was the kickback programs of preferred vendors. When you have a broker dealer license, you have your preferred vendors, your preferred providers, and the reason they're preferred is because they give enhanced marketing dollars, sometimes just on the firm level, and sometimes it's to the individual advisor. They'll do seminars for them. They'll even pay for mailings and things like that in order to help build up their business. So I don't necessarily see it as a huge bad thing, but there is a conflict of what would I call it? Not duty of loyalty conflict, but the fact is that they're going to be more apt to put business with these companies that are preferred vendors as opposed to with other companies that don't have that kind of reciprocal relationship. So that is going to be an obvious thing. I never saw a problem with it. I always did that with certain annuity companies back when I was a registered rep. Also the same with mutual fund companies.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a problem unless you're doing it knowing that you're directly harming your client, knowing that you're putting somebody with a certain product because you're going to get a bonus or whatever, or they're a preferred provider. Whereas if you put them with somebody else, you know that might be a better product for them, but that I can see as being a problem in some ways, because if you're trying to meet some goal or you're getting some bonus from some preferred provider, this goes back to Medicare. You are more likely to steer them towards the product that does whatever it is that's going to be a bonus for you. Now, again, that's conflicting with being a fiduciary and all this other stuff. So it can be a mess if you get into that, things like that. But
it can be, and the thing is that the material differences between most contracts aren't that big.
Not
so as
usually.
long as you're not putting someone very much worse off, you can almost justify any contract, almost. As long as you're putting them in a better position, it would work. Okay, so this one contract has like 10 basis points more expense ratio than another one. You know what? Not a big deal. 10 basis points, okay. And they reciprocate their support back to me, not a problem. If you're thinking that, that's a big enough deal, I can't do that, okay. Put them where they've got to be the best. Or where you think is the best today. The problem is we don't know what the best is 10 years from now from what you do today. So it almost all it
all tends to come out in the wash
hairs
for the most part. It all tends to. It's like when you look at a CVLI, cash value life insurance illustration, they all tend to kind of perform roughly the same given a 10, 20, 30 year time period. There may be some that are a little bit better here or there, but over time they're all kind of designed to perform roughly the same.
Well, and I like this brings up I like what our mutual mentor in the past has talked about, which is he talks about the college pennant flag. So you've got think about the college pennant, and it's one of those flags that evens out over time. So you have one company that over illustrates, it's going to go down over time. You have one company that under illustrates, it's going to go up over time because they under promised but over delivered. Then you got one company that's in the middle that they plot along, they do just fine. It all is going to even out, be pretty much about the same. Is it going to be that big of a difference up front? Probably not. Again, assuming that we've structured them properly to begin with in the right kinds of contracts that is meant to solve the problem. So yeah, there's a lot of different minutiae and things out there. So,
but yeah, I'm excited for next week. I think we did a good job here. We're gonna hopefully have my good friend Steve on next week. He's going to be talking to us about mortgages and some important things to know about that and his experience. And so, if don't miss next week. We're going to have some good questions for Steve. He's going to help you guys out and really help bring some clarity to the mortgage industry, how things are going, and how everything works there. He's been in the mortgage business for probably 20 plus years now. So we'll find out next week. I forget, but go
Absolutely.
ahead.
And one thing that he pointed out is that he does not work for a big bank. He's with an
No,
independent mortgage company.
he's an independent MLO. So he he works with he kind of like an independent agent where we can kind of help you do the best for you. So
all right. So Alonzo asked, so a RILA, registered indexed linked annuity, is a new fancy term for variable annuity. I don't know enough about the properties of both. I can't say that because a variable annuity technically does not have any downside protection on the cash value investments within the contract. Yes, your income is protected, but your cash value can rise up and down and do whatever it does, subject to the market. But that doesn't mean that your income stream will be affected. It just means that whatever's remaining. So your beneficiaries can be affected. So that's the ultimate cost there. So if the market lost 50%, your income is fine, but your beneficiaries, when you pass, they only get whatever's remaining in the contract. They don't get the continuing income unless you have a different kind of payout structure. Alonzo also asked, next week, can you guys ask Steve about the collateral assignment? And so Alonzo talks about this quite a bit on his channel. He talks about using collateral assignment on life insurance to purchase properties.
Yeah. So Alonzo, next week, what I'd like to do is, if we have enough audience, I'd like to have it set up so that, and if you want to invite other people on, maybe we can have it set up so that people can come on and type in questions and ask Steve questions directly and get his thoughts and opinions on some things about the mortgage industry. And
heck, we can have Alonzo join in the chat with us here. We can have him on camera. We can do that. That's
I'm just saying, because even if we just have people if there's a lot of people, if we can get enough people engaged and we just have people in the comments, that would be cool. But yeah, if Alonzo wants to join, he can come on anytime, man. Come on with us, Alonzo. We'd like to have you.
Yeah, we'll have some fun with him. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We'll make a point to do that next week. Although we just made an executive decision without Kurt, but that's okay. He's not here.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
It's one of those things that when someone doesn't show up, you get to volunteer them for everything else.
Yeah, you get voluntold.
That's it. Yeah. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Your comments, hitting like, subscribe, and do all the things. We'll catch you all next week, and we'll see you then. Thanks. Bye-bye.